The training hall at the Galactic Academy was usually a calm place where students from different worlds learned to work together. Today was different. Amy Brooks heard the sound before she saw what was happening. It was a deep, threatening growl that made the walls shake slightly. She walked faster toward the noise. Amy was a human teacher at the academy, only 28 years old but already experienced in dealing with aliens from many planets. She had short brown hair, practical clothes, and calm brown eyes that missed nothing. When she turned the corner, Amy saw the problem immediately. In the center of the training room stood a young Craxi. The Craxi were tall alien predators with dark blue fur, 6 eyes, and sharp claws. This one was barely a teenager by his species standards. His name badge said Rixtel. He had his claws out and his lips pulled back to show rows of dangerous teeth. Every muscle in his body screamed aggression. 3 teachers stood around him at a safe distance. They looked worried and unsure. Commander Velton was a floating jellyfish-like alien whose body was flashing with nervous lights. Educator Trix had forearms raised in a calming gesture. Senior Instructor Korth was another Craxi, much older and covered in combat scars. Even he looked uncertain. On the other side of the room stood Katie Morgan, a young human woman with red hair tied back in a ponytail. She had her arms crossed and looked more annoyed than scared. Katie was 19 and came from a farm in Montana on Earth. Commander Velton spoke through his translation device. "We have a diplomatic problem." The human student Katie accidentally stepped on the Craxi student's tail. This triggered a dominance challenge. "We should evacuate and let them calm down for several hours." Amy looked at young Rixtal more carefully. Despite his aggressive display, she noticed his front leg was shaking slightly. His ear flaps kept moving toward Instructor Korth as if seeking approval. This was not a predator about to attack. This was a scared teenager trying to look tough. Katie spoke up. "Look, I already said sorry about stepping on his tail. It was an accident. I barely even touched it." Rixtal snarled louder. "You do not apologize. You mocked me. You showed no respect. I am from the Talrix Pride, descendant of warriors who conquered the northern wastes." I said excuse me and my bad. "That is an apology," Katie shot back. Amy stepped forward before anyone could stop her. She walked right between Rixtal and Katie. The young Craxi's growl got louder. Every other being in the room held their breath. Amy looked Rixtal directly in his main eyes. Among the Craxi, this could mean either a challenge or great respect, depending on the situation. "Rixtal of the Talrix Pride," she said clearly. "I see you." This was the traditional Craxi greeting. His growl became a bit quieter. "Your display of strength honors your ancestors," Amy continued. "Your warrior spirit makes your family proud." Rixtal's ears moved forward slightly. Though his claws stayed out, Amy turned to Katie. "Katie, among the Craxi people, touching someone without permission is a serious insult. Touching the tail is especially bad because they see it as a very personal body part. Your apology was nice but not enough by their customs." Katie's eyes went wide. "Oh, I did not know that. Rixtal, I am truly sorry. I did not understand what it meant, and I should have been more careful." Rixtal relaxed a little, but he still looked hurt. "You are a prey species," he muttered. "You cannot understand the ways of hunters." Amy had been waiting for this. She turned back to Rixtal and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone accepting a challenge. "Prey species?" she said softly. "Is that what you think humans are?" Instructor Korth stepped forward. "Lieutenant Brooks, perhaps we should not—" "Tell me, Rixtal," Amy interrupted. "What do you know about Earth?" The young Craxi looked confused by the change in topic. His ears flattened. "It is a garden world, soft. Your people came from tree dwellers who ate fruit and leaves." "Partly correct," Amy said. "Humans eat both plants and meat. We did live in trees for a while. But do you know where we spent most of our history?" Rixtal said nothing. Amy's smile grew wider. "We spent it on the ground in Africa, one of the most dangerous places on our planet. And do you know how we survived? Not by hiding, not by running away. We survived by being the scariest hunters our world ever produced." She began walking slowly around Rixtal, not threatening him but moving with complete confidence. "Humans practice something called persistence hunting. Do you know what that is? We would pick a target, often something bigger and faster than us, and we would chase it. For hours. For days if we had to. Through heat that would kill most species. We would chase our prey until its body gave up from exhaustion, until it could not run anymore, and then we would kill it." Rixtal's ears were now fully forward, his aggressive posture forgotten as he listened. We have no claws, Amy continued, holding up her hands. We have no armor. We do not even have strong jaws. But we have something more dangerous. We have endurance. We have intelligence. We can throw weapons accurately from far away. And most important, we work together in groups. She stopped in front of Rixtal again. On Earth, humans are the top predator. Not because we are the strongest or fastest, but because we are smart, stubborn, and we never give up. We hunted woolly mammoths with pointed sticks. We tamed wolves and made them our hunting partners. We looked at the most dangerous animals on our planet and decided they would make nice decorations. The hall was completely silent. Even Katie was staring at Amy with surprise. So when you growl at a human, young Rixtal, remember this. Amy's voice got lower and more serious. We learned to read predator body language because we had to hunt them. We learned patience because we had to outlast them. And we learned to work together because a single human could not survive alone. You are a warrior from a proud species, and that deserves respect. But never mistake human kindness for human weakness. She stepped back and became warm and professional again. Now I believe we have a problem to fix. Rixtal, Katie's apology was genuine, even if it did not follow Craxy rules. Would you accept it if she offered it properly? Rixtal looked at Katie with new eyes. His aggressive display was completely gone now. He slowly pulled his claws back in and lowered his raised fur. I would accept. Amy turned to Katie. Among the Craxy, a formal apology needs eye contact, a slight bow of the head, and the phrase I have trespassed against your honor.
Can you do that?
Katie nodded and stepped forward. She met Rixtal's eyes, bowed her head slightly, and said clearly, I have trespassed against your honor. I apologize for not knowing and for being careless. Rixtal's tail moved once, showing acceptance. Your apology honors me. I accept, and I ask forgiveness for overreacting. Forgiven, Katie said with a relieved smile. The tension in the room finally broke. Students began coming back in for the next class. Commander Veltan's lights returned to their normal calm pattern. Educator Trix lowered all four hands. Instructor Korth approached Amy. His expression was hard to read. That was educational, Lieutenant Brooks, though I must note that your description of humans as predators is different from how they usually present themselves. Amy met his gaze calmly. With respect, Instructor, humans are complicated. We can be gentle and kind, but we can also be fierce and dangerous. The key to good diplomacy is knowing when to show which side, and never letting people forget that both sides exist. As the class began, Amy took her position at the teaching panel. Rixtal sat in the front row, and for the first time he was really listening and thinking hard about what he had just learned. In the big picture of galactic politics, it was a small moment. One young Craxy, one human student, and a lesson about not judging species by how they look. But Amy knew that big changes often started with small moments. As she looked around the room at dozens of different species, all watching her with new interest, she knew that humanity's reputation in space had just changed. The prey had shown its teeth, and the predators were now paying attention. The story of what happened in the training hall spread through the academy, faster than light-speed communications. By evening, every species group had their own version. The floating Vexali talked about it as a perfect example of smart de-escalation. The philosophical Mendari debated what it meant about predator and prey dynamics, and the Craxy reaction was complicated. Amy was in her quarters reviewing student files when her door chimed. The academy gave teachers small but comfortable rooms. Amy had made hers feel like home with a photo of mountains from Earth, an old book, and a small tree in a pot that had somehow survived 3 moves between star systems. Come in, she called, setting down her electronic pad. The door opened and Instructor Korth entered. His huge body barely fit through the human-sized doorway. Despite his size, he moved with the grace of a big cat from Earth. Instructor, Amy said, standing up. This is unexpected. Lieutenant Brooks. Korth folded his legs beneath him in a way that looked uncomfortable but was natural for his species. I hope I am not intruding. I wanted to speak with you about what happened today. Of course. Amy sat back down, keeping eye contact as Craxy custom required for serious conversations. I hope I did not cross any lines. I know the situation was delicate. Korth's ear flaps moved, and what Amy had learned meant amusement. On the contrary, you showed exactly the kind of cultural awareness we hope to teach our students. However, that is not why I'm here. He leaned forward slightly, all 6 eyes focusing on her intensely. You know much about my species, Lieutenant. But what you told young Rixtel about humans, I must know. How much was true and how much was strategy? Amy thought carefully before answering. Everything I said was factually accurate. Humans did practice persistence hunting. We do have remarkable endurance compared to most Earth species. And we absolutely did work our way to the top of the food chain, through intelligence and cooperation. But, Korth prompted, but I also chose the facts that would make the biggest impression on a young Craxi warrior, Amy admitted. I emphasized the predatory parts of human nature because that was what Rixtal needed to hear. I did not mention that most modern humans get tired climbing stairs, or that we have spent thousands of years breeding the predator out of ourselves in favor of farming and civilization. Korth's laugh rumbled through the small room. Honest, good. This is why you were chosen for this position, I think. His expression became serious. But I must tell you, Lieutenant, your words today have caused ripples among my people. Ripples. The Craxi have always viewed ourselves as the top warriors of the Coalition, Korth explained. It is not just pride. It is our identity, our purpose. When humanity joined the Coalition 15 years ago, we placed you in a category. We saw your lack of natural weapons, your fragile bodies, your preference for talking over fighting. We put you in the protected category alongside other prey species. Amy felt a flash of annoyance but kept her face neutral. I see. Today you challenged that view, and young Rixtal has been telling everyone who will listen about the persistence hunters of Earth and how humans conquered their world through pure determination. Korth's ears flattened slightly. Some of the older warriors are not pleased. They say you filled a cub's head with stories to make him doubt Craxi's superiority. That was not my goal, Amy said carefully. I was trying to find common ground, warrior culture to warrior culture. The Craxi value strength and determination, yes? Those are traits humans share. Indeed. Korth stood up, his head nearly touching the ceiling. I understand your intention and I support it. But I wanted to warn you, Lieutenant. There will be those among my people who see your words as a challenge, and the Craxi way of answering challenges is rarely gentle. After Korth left, Amy sat in the dim light thinking. She had known that words had power, especially in diplomatic settings, but she was starting to realize she might have kicked a hornet's nest without fully understanding the consequences. Her communicator buzzed. A message from the Academy Director, Elder Kiv, requesting her presence in the morning. The tone was polite but firm. Wonderful. Amy pulled up the Academy's cultural database and began reading everything she could find about Craxi honor culture. If she was going to face whatever was coming, she would do it prepared. The night passed slowly. The next morning, Amy arrived at Elder Kiv's office to find she was not the only one called. Katie was already there, looking nervous. Rixtel stood by the door, his posture stiff and formal. And to Amy's surprise, 3 adult Craxi she did not recognize stood in the center of the room. Elder Kiv sat behind his desk. The Zenthari looked like Earth salamanders, but much larger and far more intelligent. His skin glowed with patterns that showed his emotions, currently dark blue for serious concern. Lieutenant Brooks, thank you for coming. Elder Kiv's voice was soft, but carried authority. Let me introduce War Leader Tekrix of the Talrix Pride, his mate Honor Guard Velrix and their eldest daughter Hunter Scout Kirarix, Rixtel's family. Amy's stomach sank, but she kept her professional face. War Leader Tekrix was massive even for a Craxi, with silver streaks in his fur and scars from a lifetime of combat. His mate was only slightly smaller with perfect dark blue fur. The daughter, Kirarix, looked to be in her early 20s by human standards. Lean and alert. I see you, War Leader Tekrix, Amy said, using the traditional greeting and meeting his gaze respectfully. I see you, Honor Guard Velrix. I see you, Hunter Scout Kirarix. Tekrix's ears moved forward in acknowledgement. I see you, Lieutenant Amy Brooks of Earth. His voice was a deep rumble Amy felt in her chest. You are the one who spoke to my youngest son yesterday. I am, Amy confirmed. The one who told him that humans are predators. Top hunters. Persistence killers who brought down huge beasts with nothing but endurance and will. I did say those things, yes. There was a long silence. Amy could feel Katie's anxiety. Elder Kiv's skin flickered uncertainly. Then War Leader Tekrix did something unexpected. He threw back his head and laughed, a booming sound that shook the windows. His mate and daughter joined in. Finally, Tekrix roared. Finally, someone tells the truth about humans instead of the cleaned-up diplomatic version we have been fed for 15 years. Amy blinked in surprise. Excuse me? Honor Guard Velric stepped forward. Lieutenant Brooks, do you think us fools? Do you think we cannot research? Cannot investigate? She pulled out a data pad and began scrolling. When humans joined the coalition, we Craxi did what we always do. We studied your combat capabilities, your history, your nature. Do you know what we found? Amy had a pretty good idea but stayed silent. We found the persistence hunting you mentioned, Velrix continued. But we also found Roman legions who conquered an empire through discipline. We found Mongol armies who built the largest land empire in Earth's history. We found Vikings, samurai, Zulu warriors, and 100 other warrior cultures. Kirarix took over. We found records of 2 global wars that consumed your entire planet. Wars where humans killed other humans by the millions. We found nuclear weapons, biological warfare, chemical weapons. We found a species that looked at mutual destruction and decided it was an acceptable strategy. And most interesting, Tekrix said, his 6 eyes gleaming, we found that humans are pack hunters who never forgot how to work together. You formed the United Earth Coalition before you even left your home system. When you met us, you did not cower. You negotiated as equals and you made it clear that while you preferred peace, you were capable of war. He moved closer to Amy. So why, Lieutenant, does every human diplomat we meet pretend you are soft, weak? Why does your government present humans as gentle scholars who pose no threat? Amy felt the weight of the question. This touched on big policy issues decided by people far more important than her. But she was here now, and the war leader deserved an honest answer. Because, she said slowly, when humanity reached the stars and found we were not alone, we were terrified. Not of you, but of ourselves. We had just barely survived the last war which nearly made Earth unlivable. We were so afraid of our own violence that we decided the best path was to emphasize our peaceful side, to present ourselves as harmless scholars who only wanted to learn and trade. A lie, Tekrix said flatly. Not a lie, Amy countered. A choice. We genuinely do want peace. We genuinely prefer talking to fighting. But you are right that we have hidden certain aspects of human nature. And this is what I wanted my son to learn, Velric said, her tone turning maternal. Rixtel is young, foolish, full of pride. When he came home last night and told us about the human who made him question everything he thought he knew, we knew we had to meet you. She stood beside her mate. The Craxi have grown comfortable, Lieutenant. We believe ourselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy. And perhaps we are. But believing in your own superiority without challenge leads to weakness. Rixtal needed to learn that strength comes in many forms, and that underestimating someone because they do not look dangerous is a fatal mistake. Kirarix grinned, showing her teeth. Plus, it is about time someone reminded the youngsters that the universe does not revolve around Craxi culture. Kira, her mother said warningly, but with affection. Amy felt the tension ease. This was not a confrontation. It was acknowledgement. The first training session did not go well at all. Amy had reserved one of the Academy's special training rooms that could adjust gravity, atmosphere, and temperature for different species. For this session, she set it to normal coalition standards that everyone could handle comfortably. Katie arrived first, 15 minutes early, carrying a data pad full of notes and wearing an eager expression. Rixtel arrived exactly on time, which for Craxi was barely acceptable, and his body language screamed resentment. Right, Amy said, deciding to address the problem directly. Rixtel, you do not want to be here. That is obvious. So let's talk about it. The young Craxi's ears flattened against his head. With respect, Lieutenant, I am here because my father commanded it. My personal feelings do not matter. Actually, they do matter, Amy said. If you are going to learn anything, we need to be honest with each other. So I will go first. I did not expect to be teaching 2 junior aides, and I am not sure how to integrate you into my regular work. This is new for me too. Katie raised her hand tentatively. I am pretty much terrified I am going to accidentally offend someone again and start another incident. Both Amy and Rixtel looked at her. Katie blushed but continued. I am from rural Montana. The most exotic culture I met before the academy was Japanese exchange students at my high school. I am trying really hard, but I feel like I am one wrong word away from causing a disaster. The honesty seemed to crack something in Rixtel's stiff posture. His tail, which had been lashing in anger, went still. My father is right. I'm arrogant. I come from a long line of warriors, and I was raised to believe that Craxi culture is better than all others. When I came to the academy, I expected other species to recognize that. Instead, I found that most species fear us, and those that do not often dismiss us as violent brutes. He looked at Katie with what might have been embarrassment. When you stepped on my tail, I saw it as proof of what I had been told, that soft species do not respect Craxi because they do not see us as worthy of respect. I reacted with aggression, as I was trained to do, but I did not consider that you might simply not know our customs, and I did not think to learn them before coming to an academy full of different species, Katie admitted. That was stupid of me. Amy felt a surge of hope. Honesty was a good starting point. Okay, so we are all out of our comfort zones and we have all made assumptions. That is actually perfect for what I have planned. She pulled up a holographic display showing a complicated diplomatic scenario. This is based on a real first contact that happened 7 years ago. The Kelrath Confederacy met a new species called the Tyvix, who communicate mainly through scent and color changes. The first contact almost resulted in war because of cultural misunderstandings. Katie leaned forward, studying the display. What happened? That is what we are going to figure out. I will give you the background information available to the Kelrath team at the time. Your job is to develop a first contact plan that would have prevented the conflict. But here is the twist, Katie. You will present the Kelrath perspective. Rixtal, you will present the Tyvix perspective. Rixtal's fur raised slightly. You want me to argue from the perspective of an unknown prey species? I want you to argue from the perspective of a species that was misunderstood and nearly attacked because of it, Amy corrected. And Katie, the Kelrath are an insect-like warrior culture with rigid hierarchies and strong territorial instincts. Sound familiar? Katie's eyes widened with understanding. You want us to argue from each other's perspectives. Exactly. You cannot build bridges without understanding what the other side stands on. This exercise forces you to think like someone completely different from yourself. You have 3 days to prepare. I suggest you work together to share information. But your final presentation should be individual. The next 3 days were revealing in ways Amy had not expected. The first day, they sat on opposite sides of the room, working in stony silence. The second day, Katie carefully asked Rixtal a question about Kelrath military structure, and he answered with short, precise words. By the third day, they were actually discussing the material, debating interpretations, and Amy caught them laughing together over a particularly absurd diplomatic mistake in the historical record. The presentations themselves were better than Amy had hoped. Katie went first, standing before the holographic display with visible nervousness but real preparation. The Kelrath approach to first contact focuses on strength displays and establishing territory, she began. When they met the Tyvix, they interpreted the Tyvix color changes as threat displays, like how Earth's poison dart frogs use bright colors to warn predators. They responded with their own threat displays, which made things worse. She continued through a detailed analysis of Kelrath psychology and culture. It was thorough, well-researched, and showed real empathy for a species whose worldview was completely alien to her own. When she finished, Rixtal stood. He was still clearly uncomfortable, but his preparation was evident. The Tyvix are a collective intelligence species, he said clearly. Their color changes are not threats but communication. They have no concept of individual identity as Craxi or humans understand it. The entire species shares a distributed consciousness through chemical and light signals. He pulled up detailed analyses of Tyvix biology and social structure. When the Kelrath displayed aggressive postures, the Tyvix thought this was a distress signal from a species in pain. Their response was to try soothing colors and scents, which the Kelrath thought were chemical weapons. Both species were trying to help or communicate, but neither understood the other's basic nature. His conclusion was particularly good. The conflict happened not from evil intent, but from assuming that all intelligent species must think like you do. The Kelrath assumed threat because they used displays of strength. The Tyvix assumed distress because their collective would only show such behaviors in crisis. Both were wrong because both assumed their way of understanding was universal. Amy felt proud. They had gotten it. Really gotten it. Excellent work, both of you, she said. Now what is the solution? How do you prevent this kind of misunderstanding in future first contacts? Katie and Rixtal exchanged glances, and Amy saw something new between them, the beginning of mutual respect. You cannot assume anything, Katie said. You have to approach every new species with real curiosity and acceptance that your framework might not apply. And you must be willing to look foolish, Rixtal added. The Kelrath could have avoided conflict if they had been willing to admit they did not understand and asked for help. But that would have meant admitting weakness, which Kelrath culture does not allow. Exactly. Amy brought up a new display showing the actual resolution. It took a third-party mediator, a Vexali diplomat named Sental, to help communication. Sental spent 3 months living with each species, learning their languages and frameworks before even trying to create a dialogue. She looked at both students. This is why cultural skills are not just academic. They are life and death. The ability to see past your own assumptions, to genuinely understand that others might experience reality in a fundamentally different way, that is the difference between peace and war. Rixtal was quiet for a long moment. I owe you an apology, Katie Morgan. Katie blinked in surprise. What? I assumed you stepped on my tail out of disrespect because I could not imagine any other reason for violating my boundaries. I saw you through the lens of Craxi culture and judged you. That was wrong. And I should have done my homework before coming to the academy, Katie said. I just assumed everyone would understand human social cues and accidents would be forgiven easily. That was pretty narrow-minded of me. Amy watched them with growing respect. This was the turning point where students became colleagues, where differences became assets instead of obstacles. All right, she said. New assignment. I want you both to work together to develop a first contact protocol for humanity's next major exploration push. Earth's Deep Space Scout Service is planning expeditions beyond Coalition space. Your job is to create a comprehensive protocol that takes into account everything we have learned about cultural miscommunication. Together? Rixtal asked. Together, and I want you to present it to the Academy Board in 2 weeks. This will not be a simulation. If your protocol is good enough, it might actually be adopted by the Earth Scout Service. Both students looked stunned, but also excited. Over the next 2 weeks, Amy watched something remarkable happen. Katie and Rixtal went from reluctant partners to genuine collaborators. They spent hours in the Academy's archives researching every documented first contact in Coalition history. They interviewed diplomats, scientists, and even scouts who had close calls with undiscovered species. More importantly, they learned from each other. Katie began to understand Craxi honor culture, not as senseless aggression but as a sophisticated social framework built around clear hierarchies and mutual respect. Rixtal began to see human flexibility not as weakness but as a survival strategy that had served humanity well. The presentation to the Academy Board was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Amy arrived early to find Katie and Rixtal already there, reviewing their notes. Rixtal's family had come to watch, along with Instructor Korth. 3 months after the first contact protocol presentation, Amy Brooks had become well known at the Galactic Academy. Students from across the Coalition began asking to join her advanced cultural skills courses. Teachers started sending difficult cases to her. And somewhere along the way, her small team of 2 students had grown to 7. Katie and Rixtal remained her main assistants, but they had been joined by others. Lynn was a Vexali engineer who struggled with the direct communication styles of aggressive species. Maya was a Mindari philosopher who spent more time thinking about universal truths than dealing with practical realities. Jack was a human cargo hauler from the asteroid belt who had come to improve his business and discovered he had a gift for helping others communicate. And 2 Kelrath siblings, Tiknash and Reknash, whose warrior culture often clashed with the Academy's diplomatic mission. Amy's quarters had become an unofficial meeting place where her team gathered to study, argue, and occasionally share meals from their various homeworlds. It was chaotic and sometimes frustrating, but it was exactly the kind of cross-cultural collaboration Amy had hoped to create. Then came the biggest test of her skills. It started with a simple notification on her datapad during breakfast. Lieutenant Brooks, please report to Elder Kiv's office immediately. Priority Alpha situation. Priority Alpha meant one thing, a potential crisis that needed immediate attention. Amy arrived at Kiv's office to find it more crowded than she had ever seen it. Elder Kiv sat behind his desk, his skin showing the dark red of extreme stress. Instructor Korth stood to one side, his posture rigid, and at the center of the room stood a being Amy had never seen before. The newcomer was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin like crystal that broke light into rainbow patterns, forearms ending in delicate fingers, a head that seemed too large for the slender body, with sense organs Amy could not identify. This was a species not in the Academy's database. Lieutenant Brooks, Elder Kiv said, his voice strained. This is Ambassador Velshara of the Crystal Union. Their ship arrived 3 hours ago, requesting immediate contact with the Coalition. Amy's mind raced. First contact with new species was handled by specialized teams, not junior officers at a training academy. Unless the Crystal Union comes from the outer reach, Korth explained grimly. Beyond Coalition space. They claim to represent 15 species, all unknown to us, and they bring disturbing news. Velshara's voice when she spoke was like wind chimes in breaking glass. Her translator struggled with the unfamiliar language. Pardon abrupt arrival. Crisis situation. The Devourer comes. The Devourer? Amy echoed. A force that consumes worlds, Velshara said, her crystal skin flashing with colors Amy could not interpret. Not species. Not empire. Something else. Spreading through outer reach. Has already destroyed 3 Crystal Union worlds. We flee, seek aid, seek sanctuary. Elder Kiv turned to Amy. Here is the crisis, Lieutenant. Ambassador Velshara refuses to speak with our standard diplomatic corps. They will only work with someone who understands multi-species cooperation at a fundamental level, someone who can think across cultural boundaries. They asked for you specifically, Korth added. They have been monitoring Coalition communications and heard about your work. They believe you can help them. Amy felt the weight settle on her shoulders. What do they need? Everything, Velshara said. Military aid, sanctuary for refugees, technology exchange, alliance, but most important understanding. Crystal Union is 15 species working as one. Coalition is many more species, but you do not truly work together. You coexist. We need you to teach Coalition how to truly unite. Before Devourer comes here too. It was possibly the biggest responsibility Amy had ever been handed. I will need my team, Amy said immediately. Your students? Korth's doubt was clear. Lieutenant, this is a matter of galactic security. Exactly why I need them. If we are going to teach the Coalition how to truly work across species lines, we cannot do it with a single perspective. I need Katie's human adaptability, Rickstahl's craxy warrior insight, Lynn's engineering expertise, all of it. Elder Kiv considered this. Unorthodox. But your entire approach has been unorthodox. Very well. You have authority to work directly with Ambassador Velshara, but understand the stakes, Lieutenant. If the Crystal Union's warnings are accurate, this Devourer could reach Coalition space within a year. We need solutions. 2 hours later, Amy's entire team filled one of the Academy's large conference rooms along with Ambassador Velshara and 2 of her aides. A species that looked like walking plants and another that seemed to be mostly energy contained in crystal. Brief introduction for everyone, Amy said. Team, this is Ambassador Velshara of the Crystal Union. Ambassador, this is my cultural skills team. We are going to work together to figure out how to help you, and possibly how to save the Coalition from this Devourer threat. Rickstahl raised a claw tentatively. Lieutenant, we are students. How can we help with military strategy? We are not going to help with military strategy, Amy said. We are going to help with something more important, making sure the Coalition's many species can actually coordinate a response. Ambassador, can you explain what you mean when you say the Coalition does not truly work together? Velshara's colors shifted to what might have been frustration. Your Coalition has member species. Each species has own military, own government, own interests. When crisis comes, you form committees, hold votes, debate, argue. By time you agree on action, crisis has passed or worsened. And the Crystal Union is different? Maya, the Mindari philosopher, asked. Yes. Crystal Union is not alliance of convenience, is true union. When one species discovered faster than light travel, shared with all. When one species developed medical technology, shared with all. We think as one entity with many perspectives, not many entities occasionally cooperating. Lynn, the Vexali engineer, flickered with interest. How is this possible? Species have different needs, different goals. Unity sounds ideal, but practical implementation has always failed. One of Velshara's aides, the plant-like being, spoke for the first time. Their voice was deep and resonant. Because we learned what you are teaching here. True understanding across cultural boundaries. Not tolerance, not coexistence, understanding. Jack, the human cargo hauler, frowned. That is great in theory, but we are talking about thousands of species in the coalition. How do you scale that kind of understanding? You start small, Amy said quietly, an idea forming. You start with pilot programs, demonstration projects. You prove it works, then you expand. She turned to her team. This is our task. We are going to create a working model of true multi-species cooperation right here, with this group. Coalition leadership is watching. If we can show them it is possible, we give them a blueprint. Katie looked nervous. That is a lot of pressure. Yes, Amy agreed. It is. But this is what we have been training for. This is why cultural skills matter. It is not academic theory. It is survival. The next weeks were intense in ways Amy could not have imagined. They started by establishing common ground. Each species representative spent hours explaining their worldview, their cultural frameworks, their basic assumptions about reality. It was exhausting work, but slowly patterns began to emerge. The Craxi valued strength and direct communication. The Vexali prized harmony and agreement. Humans were adaptable, but sometimes inconsistent. The Mendari saw everything through philosophical frameworks. The Kelrath needed clear hierarchies. And the Crystal Union species each brought their own views, the crystalline beings who experienced time differently. The plant-like beings who thought in terms of slow growth and long-term planning. The energy beings who could barely understand concepts like physical resources or territory. They had to learn each other's communication styles. The Vexali who showed emotion through glowing patterns. The Craxi whose tail movements conveyed meaning. The humans whose facial expressions and tones carried information. The Crystal Union species whose color shifts and energy changes all communicated something. Fights erupted. Misunderstandings multiplied. Amy wondered if she had taken on an impossible task. The breakthrough came during a heated argument about resource allocation. They were working on a pretend scenario evacuating a mixed-species colony world facing imminent threat. The Craxi wanted to save warriors who could defend the evacuation. The Vexali wanted to save cultural treasures and knowledge. The humans wanted a lottery system for fairness. The Mendari argued about the philosophical implications of choosing who lived and died. It was going nowhere until Katie suddenly stood up and said, "Wait, we are all solving different problems." Everyone stopped and looked at her. The Craxi are trying to ensure survival through military strength. The Vexali are trying to preserve what makes life worth living. The humans are trying to maintain fairness. The Mendari are trying to act ethically. We are not disagreeing about the solution. We are disagreeing about what problem we are solving. Rixtal's ears perked forward. She is right. We are talking past each other. So what if we define the problem first? Lynn suggested. Before we propose solutions, we all agree on what we are trying to accomplish. The Coalition Emergency Council meeting was unlike anything in the organization's 300-year history. Representatives from over 200 member species filled the Grand Assembly Hall, a massive structure orbiting the neutral world of Centralis Prime. The architecture itself showed diversity environmental modules for aquatic species, gravity fields for different needs, and translation systems working overtime. Amy stood in the presentation arena, a circular platform at the center where speakers addressed the council. Around her in tiered seating rising in all directions were the gathered powers of the Galactic Coalition. She had presented to groups before, but never one like this, never with stakes this high. Beside her stood her team. In 3 months since Ambassador Velshara's revelation about the Devourer, Amy's small group of 7 students had exploded into a full-scale training program. 200 students from 40 different species, all learning deep cultural skills and true multi-species cooperation. Katie and Rixtal had become senior teachers themselves. The Crystal Union had provided resources, knowledge, and urgency. But even with 3 months of intensive work, Amy knew they were barely scratching the surface. Council members, Amy began, her voice amplified. 3 months ago, we learned of a threat unlike any the Coalition has faced. The Devourer is not an empire we can negotiate with, not a natural disaster we can avoid. It is the corrupted remnant of forced unity, a system designed to absorb by destroying individual identity. And it is coming. Holographic displays activated throughout the hall, showing star maps with a spreading red zone marking the Devourer's advance. 15 Crystal Union worlds consumed. The red zone was 8 months of travel from the nearest Coalition border. The Crystal Union survived first contact because of their unique approach to multi-species cooperation. Amy continued. Not alliance. Not federation. True unity built on deep understanding across cultural boundaries. The Devourer's absorption systems were designed to break down single-species defenses. They do not know how to handle genuinely integrated multi-species cooperation. A Kelrath representative, War Clan leader Tashkal, stood. His voice boomed. You speak of weakness. Cooperation is compromise. Compromise is dilution of strength. The Craxi Empire stands ready to mobilize our fleets. We will face this devourer with warrior's pride. Before Amy could respond, Rixtal stepped forward. The young Craxi had grown in confidence. With respect to the War Clan leader, he said clearly, I am Craxi, son of war leader Tekrix of the Talrix Pride. I was raised to believe that strength alone wins battles. But I have learned something. True strength is not diminished by cooperation. It is multiplied. He activated combat simulations. These models were created by our training program, combining Craxi military tactics with human strategic flexibility, Vexali technology, and Mindari long-term planning. Against conventional threats, a pure Craxi assault fleet has a 73% success rate. But a truly integrated multi-species fleet achieves 96% success. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Kelrath War Clan leader's fur rose, but he was listening. Katie took over. We are not asking anyone to abandon their cultural identity or their species' strengths. We are asking you to enhance them by understanding others. The training program we developed does not try to make everyone the same. It teaches people how to communicate across fundamental differences and build something greater than any single species could achieve. The presentations continued. Maya spoke philosophically about diversity as strength. Lynn brought up technical specs for integrated ships. Jack discussed practical logistics. The Kelrath siblings demonstrated combat drills combining warrior culture with cooperative tactics. Ambassador Velshara shared everything about fighting the Devourer. The hall erupted in debate. Some representatives saw the value immediately. Others remained doubtful. A few were hostile. Finally, Elder Kiv spoke. I propose a pilot program. Lieutenant Brooks and her team will have 6 months and full coalition support to implement integration training on a large scale. We will establish 10 multi-species military units, each trained in this cooperation model. These units will be our first line of defense when the Devourer arrives. If the approach succeeds, we expand it. If it fails, we will have lost nothing we would not lose anyway. The vote was close, but it passed. Amy had her authorization. The next 6 months were constant motion and occasional chaos. Amy's team established training facilities on 12 different worlds. The 10 pilot military units became case studies. Integration Fleet Alpha consisted of a Craxi battle cruiser, a human destroyer, a Vexali support carrier, and a Mindari research vessel, all operating as one force. The crew rotations mixed species throughout every department. The early weeks were disaster after disaster. A Craxi officer nearly started a fight with a human engineer. Vexali crew became overwhelmed by aggressive communication. Mindari philosophers paralyzed decision-making with endless debates. But slowly, painfully, progress emerged. The breakthrough came during a training exercise. Integration Fleet Alpha was running a simulation against Devourer forces. The fleet was losing badly, each ship fighting according to its own doctrine, getting destroyed one by one. Captain Ryan Cole, the human destroyer commander, made a crucial decision. He abandoned formal command structure and opened a channel to all ships. Listen up. We are getting slaughtered because we are fighting like 4 separate ships. Katie Brooks taught me something: the best solutions come from combining perspectives. So I am asking all of you, what do you see that I do not? Responses flooded in. A Craxi weapons officer pointed out pack hunting patterns. A Vexali engineer noted energy fluctuations. A Mindari strategist suggested the Devourer had a blind spot around decentralized decision-making. A human navigator realized they could exploit the absorption protocols by feeding contradictory data. The fleet adapted on the fly. The Craxi battlecruiser led an aggressive assault while broadcasting false data. The human destroyer and Vexali carrier flanked using movement patterns no single species would consider. The Mindari research vessel coordinated everything. They won the simulation, dominated it in a way that shocked the instructors. Word spread. Other fleets requested the tactical recordings. More species volunteered ships. The doubters started believing. 2 months before projected contact, Amy received an urgent summons to a secure facility. She arrived to find the Coalition's most senior military commanders, along with Elder Kiv, Ambassador Velshara, and War Leader Tekrix. "Lieutenant Brooks," the Supreme Commander rumbled, "you have achieved something remarkable. 10 integration fleets all performing beyond projections. But we now face a decision. The Devourer will enter Coalition space at the Kepler threshold. Do we commit integration fleets to frontline combat, or hold them in reserve?" The debate revealed deep uncertainty. Some argued the fleets were too valuable to risk. Others insisted they needed to prove themselves under fire. War Leader Tekrix finally stood. "I have watched my son transform from an arrogant cub into a warrior who understands true strength. I have seen humans reveal themselves as the persistence hunters they are. I have witnessed species I dismissed as weak demonstrate courage that humbles me." He turned to Amy. "Lieutenant, Brooks once told young Rickstall that humans are predators who learned to be more than their instincts. I believe the integration fleets represent all of us learning to be more than our limitations. If we do not trust them now, we admit everything we built is illusion. We must commit them to frontline combat." The room erupted. The risk was enormous. Supreme Commander made the final decision. Integration Fleets Alpha through Gamma will form the primary defensive line. "Lieutenant Brooks, I am assigning you as Special Advisor to Joint Command. Your understanding of how these crews work will be invaluable." The Devourer arrived exactly on schedule at the edge of the Kepler threshold system. Long-range sensors showed something that made Amy's blood run cold. The Devourer was not a fleet. It was a swarm of thousands of vessels, each different because each had been absorbed from a different species. The vessels moved with perfect coordination, a single consciousness controlling thousands of bodies. All fleets engaged defensive plan. The command crackled. "Integration fleets, you have tactical priority." Captain Cole and War Captain Torvash exchanged glances on the joint command platform. A human and a Craxi working as genuine partners. "Remember your training," Torvash's voice rumbled. "Trust each other. Fight as one. The battle that followed would be analyzed for generations." The Devourer opened with a massive assault wave. Integration Fleet Alpha did something different. They scattered, each ship moving on independent vectors. The Devourer adjusted, flowing around what it perceived as fragmented defense. But the Integration Fleet was not fragmenting. They were repositioning. When Devourer vessels committed to attack runs, the Integration Fleet reassembled into a formation no single species would conceive. Craxi battlecruisers formed a rotating shell. Human destroyers provided mobile fire support. Fexali carriers deployed jamming drones. Mendari vessels broadcast complex algorithms the Devourer could not process. The crews worked with synchronization that seemed telepathic. Orders flowed from distributed decision-making. The entire fleet adapted in real time.